Okay, so I'm here today with the amazing, the fantastic. He's not paid me to say these things, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I'm here today with Graeme Donnelly from First Formations. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for the introduction.
How was
Jacob?
How was your trip?
Yeah, wasn't too bad at all.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
From your accent, you don't sound like you're from heaven. You sound like you're from Scotland.
Yeah, I'm from Glasgow originally.
From Glasgow. So I need to ask this.
Yeah.
Because I'm from Manchester.
Yeah.
I know probably the most famous Glaswegian there's ever been, Sir Alex Ferguson.
Yeah.
Did he inspire your haircut by any chance?
No, he didn't.
He didn't inspire your haircut?
No.
Okay. Before we crack on into this episode of UKBF Talks,
yeah.
I just want to find out a bit about yourself. What made you get into business?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. When I trained as a quantity surveyor and was working in a quantity surveyor office, I wasn't passionate about it. Didn't really enjoy it. So my first step into business was as a quantity surveyor. So I opened my own QS firm and enjoyed that better because of the different aspects of running a business. Made life more interesting, but in the background was always the core work that I had to do was quantity surveying, which wasn't ideal, and I was always searching for something else. But yeah, Why do I want to go into business? I think I'm quite a passionate person and wanted something to really get my teeth into. I also don't think employment suited me. And here we are today.
And how long were you doing running that quantity surveying business for before you basically started where you are now?
Well, it started, there was a few steps. I was 10 years with the quantity surveying business. And then I had a meeting with my financial advisor one night, and he said, have you heard of a SIP, which is a self-invested pension? And I said, no, I don't know what that is. He said, well, instead of a pension company investing your funds, you can invest those funds yourself in, for instance, a commercial building. So I bought a commercial building in Glasgow and opened up a business centre called Blue Square Offices, which is still running today and thriving. And I was doing that for 13 years, and then I stumbled across the company formation business. And a company formation agent in England phoned me one day and wanted to use our address for their Scottish clients, because they couldn't provide them with a Scottish registered office address. So I said, yeah, and I realised that that was the way to get address services, was to actually form the company. So it took me like 5 years to get 50 registered office addresses, and this formation agent took 6 months to get 500 at my address. So I thought, yeah, I think this is the direction we want to go in.
The path that you want to go into.
So then I found my way to e-filing and spoke to Richard Osborne, and the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
And now you're here.
Now I'm here.
Now you're here.
Now he's got me in front of a camera.
So I'm just going to ask you some, not quick fire, because I just want you to kind of break down your answers to these questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, why would someone want to register a company?
Okay, so by registering a company, you're really forming a limited company, and the big one really is what's called limited liability. So if you were not to register a company and you were to trade as a sole trader, and the business wasn't to do very well, if it weren't to do very well, then your financial position would be at risk, your personal finances, your personal possessions, your house, etc. With limited liability, the limit of your liability is the nominal value of the shares that you issue in that company. So for instance, if you set up a company and you issue 100 shares at £1, then the limit of your liability is generally £100. So that's one of the main reasons is that you can go into business with the peace of mind that you're not going to lose your house and someone's not going to walk into your living room and take your television away, that kind of thing. Other benefits are, I would suggest, credibility and prestige. You know, if you're going to go into business as a sole trader, in general terms, people think of a sole trader as one-man band, someone operating from their house. And in general terms, most people don't want to deal with that size of business. Everybody would much rather deal with a big business. Big business comes with all sorts of things. It comes with trust. It comes with track record. You know, people know where they are. They've been around for a long time. So getting into that world is what people generally want to do. And by forming a limited company, that's the first step on that rung. Other reasons to form a limited company would be, for instance, tax. I think it's fairly well known that limited companies pay less tax than a sole trader, and that's down to the fact that you can take money out of a limited company in 3 ways: salary, dividends, and director's loan. And the dividends are taxed at 19%, which is generally lower than you would pay income tax at. So tax is quite a big consideration. Other benefits are succession, or what we call selling the company.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you wanted to retire as a sole trader, it's very hard to separate the business from the person.
Yeah.
The business is the person. Whereas when you form a limited company, you're forming a separate legal entity, and the owner of the business or owners of the business are removed from it, and you've got that separate entity to sell and value and whatever. Whereas, you know, as a sole trader, that's really quite difficult. And finally, I would just say, you know, in general terms, it's all about credibility. It's all about when you start a business, is being credible, is having something that people trust that are going to give you the money and trust you not to, you know, to do that, perform that task successfully and complete that task. And if you're a sole trader, there's doubt there. Also, you get a lot of big companies that won't deal with sole traders. So you won't get on supplier lists or procurement lists. So yes, it's all about, you know, telling the world I'm taking this seriously. I'm registering a company. And I've got ambitions for this company to be much bigger. And I'm going to be here for a long time. And it's not something I'm doing as a side hustle, for instance.
I think that leads me perfectly onto the next question, which is, what are the sort of consequences that can be faced if somebody is operating outside of being registered?
Well, the consequences are, just as I've mentioned, that you may not get a lot of contracts. You may not get a lot of business because people really want to deal with big business. You know, when I first started the business, I wanted my accountants to be KPMG, and I had a business plan where I was going to earn in the first year £15,000, and KPMG's fees were going to be more than that. So I couldn't go to KPMG, but I wanted to. So, the chances are that as a sole trader, there's a higher risk of failure. Then we come to limited liability and the risk. You know, not too many new businesses are successful. A lot of them fail. So if you're going to remortgage your house, if you know, and be at financial risk for you and your family, if that business fails, then that's a big problem. That's a huge problem. So that's something you've really got to avoid.
Next question. Are there any obligations for someone to keep their company registered?
There's a thing called annual filings. So every year you've got to file what's called a confirmation statement, which in basic terms updates Companies House with the details of your company. It's quite a simple thing. You can do it yourself, or you can get a company information agent or a company secretarial company to do it for you. It's fairly inexpensive. In general terms, it's probably going to cost you something like £40 to £60 a year. But that's got to be done. The other annual filing is annual accounts. So if you're trading, you need to lodge annual accounts with Companies House and HMRC, and that generally means that you have to get an accountant. They'll charge you somewhere between £800 and £1,500 for a small business, a small 1-2-man business.
That's a lot of takeaways.
It's a lot. However, if you've not started trading and your company's dormant, you know, you're just preparing. You know, let's say you form a company and you've got a long lead in and you haven't started trading, you don't need full accounts. You can lodge what's called dormant company accounts, and you can generally fill that form in yourself, or get a company formation agent or a company secretary to do that. And that will generally cost about £60. But you've got to do those two things, and if you don't file those annual filings, Companies House will strike your company off, and that's called a compulsory dissolution. And the vast majority of companies that fulfill of those filings end up being struck off.
So two things there: confirmation statement and your annual filings.
So annual company accounts.
Annual company accounts. You know better than me. Just before we move on to my next question, what is the difference between Companies House and HMRC? Who are they?
Okay, Companies House are the UK Registrar of Companies. They register all companies, limited companies, etc., and they keep the database of companies in the UK. HMRC collect taxes and do various other things for the UK government.
Okay. Because I feel like just in layman terms, at times people may think they're the same entity, but it's just good to be able to get a differentiation between them. So, simple question.
Okay.
How do you register a company?
Okay, you can do it basically two different ways. You can go to Companies House direct, or you can go to a company formation agent. How you actually do it, it's a very simple process. So the first step would be you've got to come up with a company name, and if you say, for instance, if you're doing it with Companies House, or if you're doing it with a company formation agent, it's the same process. You enter it into their website, they'll tell you whether that name's available. The second thing you want to do is, if you're with a company formation agent, you want to choose a package, because company formation agents provide you with a lot of other additional services that you won't get with Companies House, and you can pick what package suits you. Next thing you would do is you would choose a SIC code, which is statutory industry classification. Then you have to get yourself a registered office. Now, with the company formation agent, you can use their service, their registered office service. That registered office has got to be in the UK. It's got to be a physical address in the UK. It can't be a PO box. You can use your home address. However, that might be a little bit of a problem because that registered office is placed on the public record. Next thing you would do is you'd appoint a director who runs the company and a PSC. Then you would appoint a shareholder who owns the company, and then you would issue shares. And that's basically it. Once you do that online, it would take you maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes. Once you submit your application for a new company, Companies House will generally take anywhere between 3 to 6 working hours to process that, although they could take up to 24 hours depending on their workload on the day. And it's really that simple. Yeah.
Now, with everything you just said there, that sounds like a lot to me.
Well, I guess that's why you have company formation agents. We have a very simple form when we present the information in a very simple manner, and we also have a team of experts there ready to answer any questions that anyone would have to get them through the form as quickly as possible. We also have a service where if people are uncomfortable doing it online, we can do it over the phone, so we can take control of their screen and we can actually do it for them and take them right through the whole process. Yeah. And we find that's a really popular method of doing it. Yeah. But it sounds complicated, but in practice it's not.
Yeah, yeah. Also touching on what you said, what are the best ways to allocate shares when registering a company?
Okay, so shares is that's a good question, because shares is one area where people are confused about. So if we go back to limited liability is the limit of your liability is the total nominal value of your shares. So if we were advising someone on how many shares do I need to issue, we would probably say you probably don't need any more than 100 shares. So 100 shares at £1 gives you a total liability of £100. How you allocate those shares depends on how many people there are in the company and what share each person's getting. So for instance, if you've got a one-person company, then it's very simple. That person will have 100% ownership of the company, and you can issue one share if you want, but we would generally advise issuing perhaps 10 to 100, which adds flexibility for the future. So for instance, if he wanted to add people to the company, if other people wanted to invest in it, or other business partners, then he could just issue some of his shares to them rather than allotting new shares, which can be quite a time-consuming, costly process.
Yeah.
So one person, I would suggest anywhere between 10 and 100 shares for that person. If it's a two-person company, first question is, who's going to control this company? Is it going to be 50-50? In which case you might want to give 50 shares to one person, 50 shares to the other. Is it 70-30? Then it would be 70-30, 70 shares to one, 30 shares to another. So from that point of view, that's how I would allocate shares.
Yeah.
When it comes to control of the company, shares come with what's called prescribed particulars, and they come with what's called voting rights. So you can have non-voting shares and voting shares. So, it may be that you want, someone owns the company and they want to give shares to a family member, for instance. They probably don't want to give any control of the company to the family member. They just want them to benefit from, when the company does well. So it's important then that that people understand that there are different types of shares as well. So again, a company formation agent will be able to guide people through that, which can be a bit of a minefield.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that end up giving control of their company away, or been left in a situation where they've given shares to someone, and they've given control to someone.
Yeah.
And the other thing that people don't realise also is that when you've got a director, people think that a director's got to have shares. The director runs the company and the shareholders own it. So there's no need for those directors to be given shares. So the shares really should be given only to the owners of the company, and then be careful that you retain control of it.
Yeah, that's you just literally broke something in my mind there about the directors and the shareholders.
Yeah.
If you don't necessarily have to be a director and be a shareholder at the same time.
Yeah.
But, this is great.
Okay,
this
good.
is great.
Good.
Another question that I have for you is, what are the common mistakes people make when registering a company?
Okay, so the really easy ones are the typos, spelling mistakes, either a spelling mistake with the company name or spelling mistakes with people's names. And they can all be rectified after the company's formed, but it's time consuming. It's not something you really want to do. Getting a director's date of birth wrong is another one, which is a problem. You've got to fill in a form and file it with Companies House. Again, that's sort of a bit of a problem. Not understanding the difference between a director and a shareholder, which we've just covered.
Yeah.
That's a big problem, not understanding that you don't need to give that director shares, and all directors don't need shares. And understanding how shares work and the control of the company. Other mistakes that people make are not understanding the difference between the nominal value of a share and the market value. So what we're dealing with at time of company formation, we're dealing with the nominal value. And it's the nominal value that dictates the limit of your liability. But people think when they're forming a company, if I just issue 10 shares worth £1 each, does that mean my company's only going to be worth £10? And so what some people try and do is they issue 50,000 shares at £1.
Yeah.
So that drives their liability up to £50,000. So that's a bit of a mistake. Register office is another mistake that people make, where a lot of people will use their home address, not realising that they're placing their home address onto the public register. And that will maybe invite unwanted people to your door, be an invasion of your privacy, put your family at risk, things like that. Other people may attempt to use a PO box number for a registered office. So that registered office has got to be a physical address in the UK where the director of the company will receive his mail, or the mail will be forwarded to him okay? And that's the only thing that'll go. That's the only thing that will do.
Yeah.
Nothing else will do.
Before I ask you the last question.
Yeah.
Where does you're a boss of a formation agent.
Yeah.
If I wanted to start a company, how do I find you?
The internet.
The internet.
Yeah.
What do I type in?
You type in First Formations.
First Formations.
Yeah, or company formation.
Yeah.
You'll get us. We'll be near the top or at the top of the search. But yeah, First Formations is our company. And that's first with a 1.
Yeah.
And that's how to do it.
That's how to do it.
Yeah.
Is your picture on the website?
It's on the Meet the Team page.
It's on the Meet the Team page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Along with 80 others.
Okay, that's fine. So if you see him, that's the right one.
Yeah.
So the last question that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
For anybody starting a business or getting into business,
Yeah.
this day and age, what tips do you have for that person?
Okay, I guess the first one is make sure your business idea is good. You know, a lot of people come up with a business idea and they get carried away with it and they think this is fantastic. And they speak to their family and they speak to their friends. And most people's family and friends will be nice to them and they say, oh yeah, that's a fantastic idea. So it's important to speak to others, not other than your family and friends. Speak to other people, business mentors, for instance, or maybe people within that industry that they want to go into. So make sure that the business idea holds water and there's a market for it. I say that's crucial because, you know, it's like if you're a Formula One fan.
Love it.
So, you know, when you're starting a business, the business idea, let's say that's the first bend, first corner. So you get that first bend wrong, the second one gets, you know, slightly worse.
Yeah.
Within 3 or 4 bends, you've crashed.
Yeah.
So that business idea is crucial, and make sure there's a market for it. Second thing I would say is the really boring one, but it's still, you know, nothing's changed since, you know, back in 1991, when I first went into business on my own, I was advised to do a business plan, and nothing has changed. It's still the same. You must do a business plan. A business plan will tell you how much money you're going to need to get this, you know, to carry this business before it's profitable. It will tell you, it will just basically tell you if this business is going to be successful. Tell you how much money you need, how long it's going to take for it to be successful. Without a business plan, you're basically running blind.
Yeah, it's guidance.
Yeah, you really need to do that business plan. And the third tip I would suggest is, you know, when you go into business, you're going to hit a lot of challenges. There's going to be a lot of dark days, a lot of, you know, you're going to have a lot of obstacles, and it's never give up. It's to keep on track, keep trying. My experience is that most businesses fail because the person behind it has given up. He's run out of energy. He's run out of enthusiasm. And yeah, that's one of the main things. So, you know, never give up and be prepared to change course. Be prepared to, you know, roll with the punches and stick with your idea. There will be a time when you've got to say, you've got to admit that the business isn't going to work. You know, if you just can't keep flogging a dead horse for, you know, the next 5 years, you know. So making that decision to go on or to give it up is often a very important one. And when you make that decision to say to give it up, then you're ready for your next business, and you've got all that experience from your first one. Yeah.
You've been amazing today.
Okay,
you look
thank
good.
you.
Hair's good. Great answers.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to the feedback that we get
Okay.
from this. Remember, First Formations. If you see his face, that's the right one. We'll catch you in the next episode.
Okay, thanks, Jacob.